My daughter-in-law was celebrating her 10th wedding anniversary. She and my son threw a huge party at that new downtown rooftop bar, but they didn't invite me. Hours later, her text lit up my phone. "Carol, the dog sitter just canceled. Make sure you let Buster out before bed. Don't forget his medication." I just typed back, "Okay." Then I packed a small bag and walked out. When they stumbled home, giddy from champagne, they opened the door and what they saw made their blood run cold. It was 10 p.m. when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I was sitting there looking at a half-finished crossword puzzle I had no heart to complete. The apartment smelled of lemon polish and solitude. I had spent the entire day dusting the shelves, doing their laundry, even polishing the silver my son Mark had inherited from my parents. My fingers still had that metallic tang. I grabbed the phone, a foolish hope flickering that it was Mark, telling me they were on their way to pick me up, that it was all a mistake and there was a chair for me at their celebration. But no, it was a message from Jessica, my daughter-in-law. "Carol, the dog sitter just canceled. Make sure you let Buster out before bed. Don't forget his medication." I stared at the words, reading them over and over. I felt a quiet snap deep inside me, like an old rubber band that finally gives way. It wasn't just the text. It was the casual dismissal, the assumption that my time was worthless, that I was just a built-in backup service. It was knowing that while I was sitting alone in this apartment, the one I helped them secure, they were clinking champagne glasses at the Perch, that place where a single cocktail costs more than my weekly groceries. I opened Facebook. I knew I shouldn't, but my thumb had a mind of its own. And there they were, a flood of pictures. My son Mark in his tailored blue suit, the one I'd picked up from the dry cleaners for him yesterday. Jessica in a shimmering silver dress, grinning like she was on a red carpet. My grandchildren, Leo and Mia, sipping Shirley Temples and looking bored. Jessica's parents were there, her sister, her cousins, even friends I'd never met. Everyone but me. The caption, posted by Mark, read, "Celebrating 10 amazing years with my queen. Here's to the woman who built this incredible life with me." 312 likes in under an hour. I shut off the phone. I looked around the silent living room, and then a strange clarity washed over me. I didn't get angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt calm. An icy, methodical calm, as if a part of my brain that had been dormant for years had just booted up. I stood up, my joints cracking a little. I went to my bedroom and opened the small chest at the foot of my bed. Because what they didn't know, what nobody at that party could possibly imagine, is that I had been documenting everything for the past year. And this time, I wasn't going to be the default dog sitter. This time, I was going to reclaim the life they thought I had given them. And when they came home, drunk on self-congratulation, what they would find would strip them of everything they were celebrating. But for you to understand the decision I made that night, you need to understand how I ended up here. How a 70-year-old woman who sold her life's work for her son's dream ended up being treated like an unpaid employee. And if you want to find out what happened next, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell, because this story will make you rethink everything you know about family loyalty. Let's go back 4 years, to the day I handed my son the keys to his future, not realizing I was locking the door to my own. 4 years and 2 months ago, I sold The Rolling Pin, my bakery. For 40 years, that little shop was my life. I knew every customer by name, every child's favorite cookie. After my husband Frank passed, it was the one thing that kept me going. The smell of yeast and sugar was the smell of my survival. Then Mark came to me, Jessica at his side. He had that earnest look he'd had since he was a boy, the one he used when he was about to ask for the world. "Mom," he started, over coffee at my small kitchen table. "Jessica and I have this incredible idea. A modern artisan cafe. Not like your old-fashioned place, but something new, trendy, for the young crowd in Austin." Jessica nodded, her eyes gleaming. "The location we found is perfect, but the startup costs are insane. The loan we need requires a huge down payment. We've saved, but we're short $85,000. They didn't have to spell it out. How much is the bakery worth? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mark wouldn't meet my eyes. If you sold, Mom, you could come live with us. We're looking at a 2-bedroom apartment downtown. You wouldn't be alone. The kids would love having you. Jessica's smile was blinding. It would be perfect, Carol. You could even help us at the cafe. Your experience would be invaluable. That word, invaluable. I sold the rolling pin a month later. It felt like a funeral. I got $150,000 for it. I gave Mark the $85,000 for the cafe down payment. The rest I put into a retirement fund, my little nest egg. The thing I didn't do, the mistake that haunts me, was when we set up the business. Mom, for tax reasons and to simplify the loan, it's better if the business is solely in your name for the first couple of years, Mark had explained. Once we're established, we'll do the official transfer. It's just paperwork. And I, blinded by love, agreed. I signed the papers that made me the sole proprietor of The Daily Grind, their dream cafe. The first year was a blur. I was up at 4 a.m., using my old recipes to bake the pastries that became their best sellers. I managed inventory, cleaned the grease traps, trained the baristas. I was the first one in and the last one out. Jessica would arrive around 10 a.m., dressed in stylish outfits, calling herself the creative director. She'd rearrange the flowers on the tables and post perfectly filtered photos on Instagram. Mark was the general manager, but he spent most of his time networking, taking meetings, building their brand. "Thanks, Mom," he'd say, grabbing a croissant on his way out. He never called me Carol in front of staff, just Mom, which made me feel less like the owner and more like the help. Jessica, however, only ever called me Carol. "Carol, the display case looks a bit sparse. Carol, did you remember to order the almond milk? The expensive kind." "Carol, you used too much butter in the scones again. We need to watch our margins." Never a please, never a thank you, just orders. My name, in her mouth, felt like a job title, not a term of endearment. The kids, Leo and Mia, were my saving grace. They'd come to the cafe after school and I'd sneak them a cookie. "Grandma's cookies are the best," Leo would say, giving me a sticky hug. But whenever Jessica witnessed these moments, a shadow would cross her face. One afternoon, Leo told a customer, "My grandma owns this whole place," Jessica overheard. That night, the argument from their bedroom was loud enough for me to hear in the living room. "Your mother is undermining me, Mark. She's making the staff think she's the boss." "She technically is the boss, Jess. The business is in her name." "That's just a technicality and you know it. She's the baker, I'm the face of this business. She needs to know her place." Silence. I held my breath, waiting for Mark to defend me, to remind her who funded their dream. But all I heard was a sigh. "I'll talk to her." He never did. But from that day on, I was phased out of the front of the house. I was relegated to the kitchen, the invisible engine that kept their dream running. They started taking business trips without me. They were featured in a local magazine as Austin's hottest entrepreneurial couple. My name wasn't mentioned once. I became a ghost in my own business, in my own life. And that slow, grinding humiliation was all a prelude to that anniversary night, the night I got the text about the dog. Because that text wasn't just about Buster. It was the final confirmation that in their story, I was just a footnote. And that night, I decided to write my own ending. It all began that Monday morning when Jessica came into the kitchen practically dancing. She was holding 2 tickets in her hand. "They're here!" she squealed, waving them at Mark. "What are, honey?" Mia asked, mid-chew on a piece of toast I'd just made her. "Tickets for the Austin Food and Wine Festival Gala. I've been trying to get them for years. Your mommy is going to be on the Women in Business panel." Mark swept her into a hug. "That's my brilliant wife. I knew you'd get recognized." I was standing at the counter packing lunches. That's wonderful news, Jessica, I said, and I meant it. Despite it all, a part of me was still proud. She gave me a cursory glance. Thanks, Carol. It's a huge deal. We have to celebrate, Mark announced. Properly. Let's do our anniversary party this weekend. We can book that rooftop bar, the Perch. The one with the tasting menu? Jessica's eyes lit up. Oh, Mark, yes. We'll invite everyone. Leo, ever the literal one, asked, Everyone? Of course, buddy. The whole family. A little warmth spread through my chest. The whole family. That had to include me. I wiped my hands on a dish towel. What time should I tell my bridge club I'll be leaving? We play on Saturdays. Jessica and Mark exchanged a look. One of those silent conversations I'd come to dread. Oh, Carol, Jessica said, her voice laced with false sweetness. It's really more of a late-night fancy thing. You'd be bored. Besides, she added, buttering her toast, someone needs to watch Buster and the kids after the sitter leaves at 10. We can't just leave them alone. My son said nothing. Mark, my boy, the one I taught to ride a bike, the one whose scraped knees I bandaged, just stared at his coffee cup as if it held the secrets to the universe. They left for the cafe at 9. Jessica was buzzing with plans, calling friends, booking the venue. Mark gave me a quick, guilty peck on the cheek. Have a good day, Mom. They were gone. The apartment was quiet again. The silence felt different this time. It felt final. I cleaned the kitchen, then I went online. I didn't make myself soup. I wasn't hungry. At 6 p.m., I opened Facebook. It was already starting. Jessica had posted a professional headshot. So humbled to be speaking on the Women in Business panel this year. Time to celebrate 10 years of marriage and success with my amazing husband this weekend. The comments poured in. You're an inspiration. Power couple. Can't wait to celebrate with you. I scrolled through, a masochistic impulse driving me. I saw friends of theirs confirming their attendance. I saw Jessica's sister post about what dress she was going to wear. It was a citywide event, and I was the uninvited investor. At 10 p.m., my phone buzzed. Jessica's text. Carol, the dog sitter just canceled. Make sure you let Buster out before bed. Don't forget his medication. I read it, and the last thread of hope I had for them, for my son, just evaporated. I opened the hall closet. In a shoebox on the top shelf were the business registration documents, their entire livelihood. I closed the closet, took a deep breath, and replied, Okay. Just that one word. But in that word was the sound of a lock clicking into place. A decision had been made. For months, I had been feeling this coming, since the magazine article, since they started calling me Mom in front of the staff, since I realized I had given away my life for a front row seat to theirs, a seat they kept moving further and further back. I went to my room, opened the old wooden chest, and pulled out a small suitcase. Because what they didn't realize, what they couldn't fathom while planning their perfect party, was that I had been preparing. For a year, I had been saving documents, making copies, consulting with an old friend, because this forgotten baker, this unpaid dog sitter, this 70-year-old woman they treated like a piece of furniture, was the legal and sole proprietor of the Daily Grind. This business was mine. Every penny of profit, every asset, every chair they were celebrating on was legally mine. And they were about to learn that lesson in the most public way possible. I pulled the heavy ledger out from under my bed, the one I used for the bakery for 40 years. David had bought it for me. I ran my hand over the worn leather cover. I started keeping records for the cafe in here 6 months after we opened. Not just the official books, my books. I opened it. Every contribution I'd made that wasn't on the official payroll. Every extra hour I worked. Every recipe of mine they used. Page after page. March 2021, initial investment from sale of the rolling pin, $85,000. April 2021. New espresso machine after the first one broke. $2,500, paid from my personal savings. June 2021. Unpaid labor, 80 hours a week for 12 weeks during startup. Calculated at a modest baker's wage, $24,000. The list was endless. The patio furniture Jessica had to have, $4,500. The commercial mixers that weren't in the budget, $8,000. The payroll shortfall I covered in the winter of 2022, $15,000. I did the math at the bottom of the page. Total direct cash investment, $122,500. Estimated value of unpaid labor and intellectual property, my recipes, a conservative $95,000. Grand total, $217,500. Over $200,000 of my life, my money, my work, poured into a business where I was now being asked to be the backup dog sitter. But the real power wasn't in the ledger. It was in the manila envelope tucked inside it. I pulled it out. The original business formation documents from the state of Texas. I unfolded the main page. Sole proprietor, Carol Peterson. My name, only my name. The lawyer had been clear 4 years ago. Carol, this puts all the liability on you, but also all the control. When you're ready to transfer it to Mark, it's a simple filing. We just never filed it. Mark would bring it up every so often in the first year. Mom, we should really get those transfer papers signed. But there was always a reason not to. An audit, a new supplier contract, a holiday rush. Eventually, he stopped asking. And I, with a growing sense of unease, never brought it up. It was my only safety net. My only piece of leverage in a life that was no longer my own. I put the documents back, but I didn't pack them yet. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Hello? A bright, sharp voice answered. Sarah, it's your Aunt Carol. Auntie? What a nice surprise. Everything okay? Sarah was my sister's daughter, a sharp-as-a-tack corporate lawyer in Houston. 42, divorced, and took no prisoners in the courtroom. I need your help, honey. It's about the cafe. The cafe? I thought that was Mark's. Exactly, I said. That's the problem. There was a pause. Then I heard the click of a pen. Talk to me. I laid it all out in 10 minutes. The sale of the bakery, the sole proprietorship, the unpaid labor, the investments, the anniversary party, the text about the dog. When I finished, there was a long, low whistle on the other end of the line. Aunt Carol, let me get this straight. You are the 100% legal owner of that business, and they have been treating you like this? That's the long and short of it. And you have documentation? The ledger? The receipts? Everything. I could hear her grinning through the phone. Auntie, this isn't just a family dispute. This is a slam-dunk case of financial exploitation. What do you want to do? I want, I said, my voice steady, to be seen. Oh, we can do more than that. We can make them pay. Literally. You can liquidate the business, sell the assets, take every penny. No, I said. That's not it. I don't want to destroy them. I want to reset the terms. I have a few ideas, she said, the excitement in her voice palpable. I'll be in Austin tomorrow morning. Don't do anything until I get there. I hung up and dialed another number. An old friend. Martha, it's Carol. Carol, I was just thinking about you. How are you, dear? Martha and I had been friends for 50 years. We learned how to bake together. She was widowed a few years before me. Martha, is that spare room of yours still empty? Of course. Why? Can I come over? Tonight. There was no hesitation. The door's open. What happened, Carol? And for the first time, my voice hitched. They made me invisible, Martha, and I can't live like that anymore. You get yourself over here right now, she said, her voice firm. I'll put the kettle on. I hung up and let out a single shuddering breath. It wasn't a sob of sadness. It was a gasp of relief. After 4 years of shrinking myself to fit into their world, I was about to become too big for them to ignore. It was 10:45 p.m. According to their social media, they were onto the main course: seared scallops with a saffron risotto. I figured they'd be home around 1 a.m. at the earliest. I had time. I went back to my room and started packing. Not everything, just the things that were truly mine. The quilt my mother made, the photos of Frank, my collection of classic mystery novels, the little porcelain bird he bought me on our last anniversary. Every item I placed in the bag was a piece of my old life, a life I was reclaiming. But there was more to pack. I went into the living room and took down the painting that hung over the fireplace. It was a small, unassuming landscape of the Texas Hill Country, but my father had painted it. It was mine. I took the silver candlesticks from the dining table. They were my mother's. They had gotten so used to my things being their things, my life blending into their decor. Tonight, I was drawing a line. I found a small digital voice recorder I'd bought a few months ago. The best $40 I'd ever spent. Because when people think you're invisible, they forget you have ears. I plugged it into my tablet and found the files. File 1. A phone call between Jessica and her sister. No, it's great. We get all the benefit of her recipes and hard work, and we don't have to pay her a salary. Mark feels bad, but I told him to think of it as her contribution to the family. She'd just be sitting around at home anyway. File 2. Mark and Jessica in the living room, thinking I was asleep. We need to talk about your mom, Mark. She's getting too comfortable. The staff calls her Mama C. She's starting to act like she runs the place. She put up all the money, Jess. She invested. That doesn't make her the CEO. We need to be the face of the brand. Maybe it's time we officially transfer the business name. Get her out of the day-to-day. I don't know, Jess. It feels wrong. What's wrong is letting her hold us back. Think about it. He was going to think about it. My own son. There were 9 files in total. 9 recordings of them planning my obsolescence. I copied them all to a small USB drive and tucked it into my purse. It was 11:30 p.m. Facebook showed they were cutting a lavish anniversary cake. Good. I still had time. I walked through the apartment one last time. I stopped at the door to the kids' room. They were asleep, Leo snoring softly. This was the hardest part. They were innocent. I crept in and kissed them both on the forehead. "Grandma loves you," I whispered. I went back to the living room and sat at the antique writing desk that had been my grandmother's. I pulled out a sheet of her monogrammed stationery. I wasn't just going to vanish. I would leave them a message, a very clear one. I wrote in my neatest script. "Mark, for 4 years I have worked in the cafe you call a dream. I baked, I cleaned, I invested my money and my soul, and I watched in silence as you erased me from the picture. Tonight, you celebrated your success and texted me to take care of the dog. That text made me realize my role in your life has been finalized. I will no longer be the silent partner or the convenient caregiver. You will find a package on the kitchen counter. I suggest you look at it before you call me. We will speak again, but with lawyers present. I have loved you every day of your life, but I've learned that love without respect is a debt I am no longer willing to pay. Mom." I folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. Then I took the manila folder with all the business documents. On the front, I attached a sticky note. The Daily Grind Cafe is registered under my name as a sole proprietorship. It always has been. I have records of $275 in personal investment and unpaid labor. See you at the lawyers. I placed the envelope and the folder in the center of the kitchen island where they couldn't miss it. I checked my phone. 12:15 a.m. A new picture of them doing tequila shots with friends. Perfect. I took my suitcase and the painting, and I walked to the front door. I took one last look at the life I had helped build, at the home where I was a guest. I felt no sorrow, only the exhilarating rush of freedom. I didn't slam the door. I closed it softly behind me, the click of the lock a final satisfying sound. I didn't even need a taxi. Martha's place was only 6 blocks away. As I walked through the quiet, tree-lined streets of Austin, I imagined the scene. Them, bursting through the door, laughing, full of themselves, calling my name, the growing silence, the confusion, finding the empty rooms, the missing heirlooms, and then finding the folder on the counter, the blood draining from their faces, the champagne buzz vanishing in an instant of cold, hard reality. I smiled into the warm Texas night. Tonight, they would come home to a life they thought they owned, and I would sleep in a place where I was wanted, knowing the battle for my soul had just begun. Tomorrow, the war would start. But tonight, for the first time in 4 years, I felt completely and utterly at peace. I wasn't there when it happened, of course. But Leo, bless his 9-year-old heart, told me everything a few days later when Mark brought him to Martha's house as a peace offering. Let me paint the picture my grandson described. It was 1:47 a.m. when their Uber pulled up. The lobby security guard later told Martha they were stumbling, Jessica leaning heavily on Mark, both giggling. They were on top of the world. Jessica had been the toast of the party, the brilliant businesswoman. Mark was the proud, successful husband. They got to their apartment door. "Shh," Jessica whispered loudly. "We'll wake your mom." "Let her wake up," Mark slurred. "She can hear all about our amazing night." He fumbled the key into the lock and they stepped inside. The apartment was dark, except for the small lamp I always left on in the entryway. "Mom?" Mark called out. "We're home." Silence. Jessica flicked on the living room lights, and they froze. The first thing they noticed was the big empty space above the fireplace where my father's painting always hung. "What?" Jessica frowned. "Did your mom redecorate?" Mark walked into the dining room. The silver candlesticks were gone. "That's weird." He went to the kitchen and turned on the light. The high-end espresso machine I'd brought from my old house was gone. The set of copper pots that hung above the stove had vanished. "Mom?" he called again, a note of real confusion in his voice. "Where are you?" They went to my room. The door was slightly ajar. Mark pushed it open. The light revealed a perfectly made bed, but the quilt was gone. The closet was open, half empty. The photos of my late husband were gone from the nightstand. It was like the room had been stripped of its personality. "What is going on?" Jessica whispered, grabbing his arm. Mark walked down the hall to their room, and that's when he saw it. On his pillow, a single cream-colored envelope. He picked it up. His hands, Leo said, were shaking. He tore it open. Jessica read over his shoulder. My grandson told me his father's face went from confused to shocked to utterly horrified as he read my words. "She left," Jessica gasped. "Your mom packed a bag and left?" But Mark didn't reply. His eyes had fallen on the large manila folder sitting on the kitchen island. He walked towards it like a man in a trance. He opened it. He saw the business registration, the official seal of the state of Texas, and he read the name of the owner. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." "What is it?" Jessica snatched the document from his hand. She scanned it, her eyes widening. This is a mistake. This says the cafe is in her name." "It's not a mistake," Mark said, his voice hollow. "It was always in her name. We never transferred it." Jessica grabbed the sticky note on the front of the folder. $217,500 to be exact. 200,000? She shrieked, the sound echoing in the silent apartment. "Are you telling me your mother owns our entire business and we just forgot?" "Oh my God, Jess. We didn't forget. We just put it off." The silence that fell was heavy, suffocating. Leo said he woke up because his mother started shouting. He tiptoed out of his room and saw them in the living room. His father was sitting on the sofa, head in his hands, while his mother paced like a trapped tiger. "This is not happening," Jessica repeated over and over. "This is my business. I built it." "She built it," Mark said, his voice muffled. "Legally, it was always her business." "Then you tell her to sign it over. She's your mother, for God's sake. She owes us that." "Owes us?" Mark looked up, his eyes red. "She owes us? Like we owed her the decency not to leave her at home to watch the dog while we celebrated our success. A success built on her money and her recipes?" Jessica was stunned into silence. "You," Mark said, his voice cracking. "You sent her that text. That damn text about Buster." Jessica's face, already pale, turned ghostly white. It wasn't a big deal. Was it funny to you, Jess? Humiliating her? For the first time in years, my son was fighting for me. But it was far, far too late. Leo started to cry from the hallway. Mia woke up from the noise and started calling for me. "I want Grandma. Where's Grandma?" Mark started dialing my number. Again and again. It went straight to voicemail. I had turned my phone off. He sent a barrage of texts. "Mom, where are you? Please call me. This is a huge misunderstanding. We can fix this. Please, Mom." None were delivered. Because I was at Martha's, wrapped in a warm blanket, sipping chamomile tea, and falling into the most peaceful sleep I'd had in years. Jessica, ever the strategist, tried one last move. "We'll get a lawyer in the morning. There has to be a way. We've been running it for 4 years. It's marital property or something." Mark just looked at her, his expression a mixture of pity and disgust. "You still don't get it, do you? She has a ledger. She has recordings. She has everything. And you know what's worst? She's right. I let you treat her like an employee. I let us erase her." He got up and went to the kids. Leo said his father hugged him so tight he could barely breathe, and he cried. He cried like Leo hadn't seen him cry since Grandpa Frank died. "I messed up," he whispered into his son's hair. "I lost Grandma because I was a coward." That night, the power couple of Austin's culinary scene didn't sleep. They wandered the rooms of their beautiful apartment, stripped of a few precious items, a stark reminder of the woman they had taken for granted. And they began to understand that the foundation of their perfect life was a loan from a bank of love and respect, a loan they had just defaulted on. And sometimes, when you disappear, it's the only way to prove you were there all along.